Hi everybody. My name is Tomer, and I'm going to speak on the aspect of the business knowledge on software architect and how knowledge in business can help the software architect in his work. And by referring to business knowledge, not to be confused with domain knowledge, I'm referring to knowledge in business terms and business models. So, okay. I'm going to give some introduction on my company just to give you some background. I work at Obotech. Obotech is a medium-sized company, about 2,000 employees. We're mainly in the industrial machine products, so we develop industrial machine for the flat panel display and printed circuit board, which most of them inspect, manufacture, and repair those products in the manufacturing line. So eventually, we in the value chain of smartphones, for example. About 2 years ago, I was facing the task of creating a software architecture group in my company. And one of the questions that I asked myself is, who should be software architect? What kind of capability and what kind of knowledge should those people have? What should I train them? What kind of knowledge should I give them? And the things that I know is that software architect has to live somewhere between the business need of the organization and the actual running software. And I try to map the knowledge that the software architect should have. And one of the questions that came out, do the software architect need business knowledge? Can it help him in his work? And I know that the software architect has to translate the business cases of the organization into software requirement and then software architect, and also to verify that the actual running software verify the business needs. And when I think of translation, the natural analogy that I think is translation between language. Because I know that translation between languages is an hard task. For example, if I would give this presentation in a language that you barely understand, if I ask you to translate it to English, it will be very hard because the fact that you know English is not sufficient enough for you to make the translation. And even more, if I give you the translation, for you to verify that the translation is correct, it's also being hard work. Because translating between languages requires you to understand the term of each language and the context of each sentence. And I ask myself, is this also the case with software architect having to translate business need to software? And some of you may argue that we have processes like ATAM and QAW that we have representative from business strategy and marketing, and we all come together and try to make the translation correctly. But that's maybe true if you look at those processes from a rational point of view. But if you try to look at them from a cognitive point of view, you find out that it have one major flaw. It involves people. And people like people, they are this inaccurate, sometimes non-rational, driven by different interests and even sometimes biased. So how can we make sure that all this process can come together? How can we validate that the requirement that was captured really reflect the needs of the organization? For example, if something is not aligned due to this human behavior, catching it at the beginning can save a lot of time and money and result in a much better architect. So I try to narrow down all those questions into 5 most important questions that I was concerned with. The first one, how do we know that we captured the right quality scenario? It can be maybe due to stakeholder that was missing in our process, or maybe because the stakeholder didn't understand what they should reflect to the software architect. Another one is, how do we know that we capture the right response measures? We have a process to get a response measure, but how do we know that it's correct? And how do we know, because this process involves so many people, how do we know that we didn't lose the big picture in all the prioritization process? Because different people has different prioritization lists. How do we know, what do we do if, in the consolidation step of the quality attribute workshop, we come with similar scenario? How do we consolidate them if each one of them got different response measures? Which number should we use? What are we doing in trade-off? Sometimes due to architectural constraints, we need to do trade-off. So what do we do with the new number of the quality scenario that we need to trade off? So what I try to do is try to find some example to justify why business knowledge can help me answer some of those questions. And I start with a simple example. One of the business knowledge is called business differentiated strategy, which is generally each company or product got this strategy which differentiates itself from its competitions. For example, if we are in the car business, one company may say, my differentiated strategy is performance because I create fast cars. Another one can say, my cars are the most reliable one or the most safe one. So each company positions its product or the company in different property. One of the steps of the quality attributes workshop is creating the priority. And all the participants of this process have to come up with one priority list that have to reflect the priority of the business priority of the organization. But what if, due to the human aspect of this process, we come up with a prioritization list that doesn't really reflect the business need? If the software architect can get some kind of indicator that something is not aligned, this can save a lot of money and result with architecture that better serve the needs of the organization. So in this case, the differentiated strategy can come to help. For example, if we found out that the differentiated strategy of our organization or our product is reliability, but when we look at the quality attribute priorities, we find that reliability is ranked very low, and it's may be trade-off due to the priorities, then we can see that there is some misalignment. That should trigger an alarm for the software architect to see maybe something wrong with the process. Let's continue with something a bit more complicated. One of the things that bothered me the most is how to get these response measures. These numbers that I have to put in the quality scenario. For some scenario, it's maybe easy because it reflects a real life constraint. For example, if the machine movement have to end in 10 seconds, then your algorithm have to finish its calculation in less than 10 seconds. But for some response scenario, for some quality scenario, it's maybe a bit harder. And I know that people use this process starting at big number and asking, is this satisfying? Is 10 seconds satisfying? No. Is 7 seconds satisfying? No. Is 5? Yes, okay, let's put 5. But if you think of it, if you think of this process, if you look at the graph that have response measure on one axis and business value on the other, this process will look okay if the graph will look like this. But actually, in real life, I found out that the graph may look more like this. I mean, it's got different curve, it's nonlinear, and it even can go down in some places. For example, if you have premium product and basic product, and your basic product comes too close to your premium one. So if you think of it, if we can have this graph, it can tell us a lot. For example, if you know that you can achieve a response measurement with little effort, it makes a lot of difference if you're here and you reach to here, or if you are here, and if you're here, it's even reduce your business value. So one of the problems is that you're probably not going to get this graph for your scenario, but even if you can get some point of this graph, it can tell you a lot. Luckily enough, this information is already exists in some of the business models, which I'm going to show you. 5 product layer is a business model that describes 5 layers of the product. And it starts from the inner one, the core benefit. The core benefit is the minimal value that benefit. The user of this product won't get any benefit by using this product. For example, if we look at car speed, if my goal is to get from point A to point B, then if the minimal value, then if the speed of the car will be less than the speed of walking, I won't get any benefit using the car. The next layer is the generic product. The generic product describes the basic version, the minimal feature or numbers that I need to use this product. For example, if we go to the car example, if the maximum speed of a car will be the speed that can get me to highways, that will be this number. The next one is the expected product, what the customer expects. I'm sure that in many of your cars, the maximum value of the maximum speed of your car will be much more than the speed that you need, because you look at other competitor, you look at previous product, and this is what the customer expects. The next layer is the generic, is the augmented product, is what differentiates you from your competitor. For example, if we look at the car example, if you're into a sports car, then this number will be the maximum speed of a sport car. And the potential product is what your product can be, or how your product can be used in totally different way. For example, if you have a number that can get you to exclusive club, or you hit the world record of speed, then it can serve your product in totally different way. So how can we make use of this model? Let's start with some properties of this model. The first thing you can do, you can map between quality scenario and layers. You can know each quality scenario, which layer it's talking about. Another property that we can look is the priority. When a quality scenario moves toward the center of this model, its priority increase. For example, if I can have the number for the augmented product, at least give me the number for the expected product. And if I can get that, at least give me the number for the generic product. Another thing that I found very interesting to look at is the most 2 inner layers. Those layers represent the business environment of your product. And sometimes people tend to see them as the trivial requirement, the requirement that are not going to change over time. And for example, one of my architects came to me and told me, we know those requirements by heart. We are in this business for more than 10 years. This might be true if your business environment doesn't change over time. But in reality, it creates one of a disturbing phenomenon, which I like to call architecting your previous product, which make architect and even stakeholder don't look at the number for the scenario that belong to the 2 most inner layers and use the same one from the previous product. Another thing we can see with this model is how do we consolidate between similar scenario. For example, if we look at car maintenance, if I have a scenario that talk about the generic product, and I want for the generic product that to maintenance my car at least each 2 months, but the customer expect to maintenance his car no more than twice a year, I found it's very effective to consolidate in these inner layers by using the the outer layer. So in this example, I would expect to use the number for the expected product. But sometimes you get scenario that refer to different layer. For example, you want to have the expected, you have a scenario for what the customer expect and what the product can be in the future. For example, one of the marketing manager came to me and told me, the customer expect that this scenario will take 30 seconds. But if you can give me the same scenario in 5 seconds, this can open us a new market or let the user use the product in totally different way. So what should we do in this case? Should we consolidate? If we use only the 5 seconds, then we lose the 30. But because it's talk on future product, on something that is only potential, it may be ranked very low in the prioritization process. And maybe due to trade-off, we can't satisfy this 5 seconds. So if we don't keep the 30 seconds, we may end up with response measure, which is much worse than 30. But also, if we do the other way around and keep only the 30, even if we can achieve 5 seconds with less effort, we won't be encouraged to do so because we didn't keep the 5-second response measure. So I find it very effective in those cases to keep both the scenarios and give each one of them different priority. So you can still have the response measure for the expected product, but if you can achieve, due to trade-off, the potential product, you will be encouraged to do so. Another thing we can do with this model is how to handle fallbacks. What if, due to trade-off, architectural trade-off, we found out that we can satisfy this scenario? We can stand with the 30. What should be the new number? And again, this model can come to help, and in this case, I will find it very effective to look what is the number for the next layer and try to satisfy this number. Another model I want to represent is the segmentation strategy. The segmentation strategy represents what segment your company wants to be in. For example, if you have several products and several markets, your company can say, we want to be in those products belong to this market. And it's not only the current product and the current market, it can also talk for future product. There is something that called segmentation invasion strategy. We talk where we want to be in the future. So for example, we may have market segmentation, which means all of our products go to the same market. So in this case, I would expect to have some stakeholder that represent the multi-product scenario. And to see that I have the scenario in my process. Another segmentation strategy is product strategy, which means that the same product serves several markets. And in this case, I would expect to have stakeholders that represent the multi-market scenario. Another question I usually ask is, are all those markets, should we represent as a same actor? One of the examples that I faced is we had two products. We have several models of the same product, but each one was aimed to different markets. And when we want to take a feature that was already exist in previous model and to implement it in a new model. When we try to look at the requirements, we ask the people that defined and developed the previous product, what are the requirements that they use? And naturally, what we wanted to do is to take those requirements and reuse them in the new product. But if we would have done it, it would be a mistake, because we found out that there are several profiles, of each market, that each one use different requirements. So when we split the user to each profile, we found out that some of the profile use all the requirements, while some do not. And moreover, we found out that the new product only serve the market or the profile only serve subset of the profile. And eventually, we didn't have to reuse all the requirement, but only subset of the requirement, which result in a much less effort to develop and in an architecture that serve the target audience of this product. So we saw several ways that we can use business knowledge to answer some of the questions that I presented at the beginning. And to sum up, do I think that business knowledge is something that's important to software architect? And I think that the answer is yes, because as the software architect, I have to bridge between the business and the software. You have to understand both of the domain. I'm not expecting the software architect to make business decision, but I do expect him to understand the business decision and to see some of the rationality behind them and to use the already existing information for his needs. Ideally, the software architect, there should be some way to teach software architect all the kind of knowledge that he needs for his job. For example, you need to understand the methodology of architecture, you need to understand the soft skill, and you need to understand also the business model. But even if we can't teach the software architect all those knowledges, can we find a way or a guidance for the software architect to use this business model? Well, I think that the answer to this question is also yes. Although all of the thing that I show is based on my experience, and I try to simplify as much as possible the business model, I think it can be some kind of starting of something that could be extended to something more practical. And we can create some guidelines for software architects. You can use this model and extract information in this way. Well, thank you for listening.
We do have time for questions, so we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, so I kind of got the impression from your talk that you were assuming a context of like a software product company, where you have like a product management department and a marketing department, and they've got sort of business models. What if you're in the context of like being an architect in an IT group within a non-IT company, like a pharmaceutical company, let's say?
Actually, we are not an IT company.
Okay.
We create industrial products, so most of the development is multidisciplinary. So we got physics and mechanics and software and all those disciplines.
Okay.
But the marketing create this model for his need, not for the development needs.
Okay, but I'm just saying that if you're in an organization where you don't have a marketing and product, you don't have a software product that you're selling to somebody else, but you're just using it internally. Your own colleagues are only using it.
Okay.
Right, so there isn't a product management group, there isn't a marketing group for your software product. Who plays that role in the methodology you're describing?
So I think that it depends on the goals. Because eventually the product, even if you produce the product in-house, it's has to serve some business need. So this business need can be represented, maybe not directly, but indirectly, but by the inner customers of your product. So if you want to understand their interest, you can go to see what's, for example, the differentiated strategy of your company, and try to add value in this realm.
Okay, that's an extra level of indirection there, right?
Yeah.
The company might sell drugs, or they might sell, financial services. You've got to show how the software somehow adds value to that. So that's an extra level of work that the architect needs to do, because no one's playing that role either internally.
Yeah, internally, maybe because I'm come from a company that doesn't identify itself as a software company. We sell industrial product. So the marketing and the project manager and the customer support are not software people. Most of them come from physics or business school. And I think that this setting creates some kind of gap between what the people, the business people can represent and what the software people can understand. So in order to bridge this gap, I think that the role of the software architect is try to understand both the domains, the business domain, what the people are talking about, and be able to ask them the right questions in order to understand what he needs for his requirement, and to reflect it back to the software teams. Do we have time for?
Yeah, you talked about the translation aspect earlier in the talk, and I find that really compelling. Beyond just the architects and the market position, what are some of the other points you see that breaking down and people talking past each other in your industry?
Again?
So you talk about people talking past each other, not speaking the same language effectively.
Yeah.
What are some of the other breakdown points you see architects engaged in beyond just with the market? Are there other places?
Yes, actually, in my company, another place that we don't speak the same language is with system engineers, because system engineers in multidisciplinary product also didn't come from software, so they just understand the physics aspect and the mechanic aspect, but they don't understand what they should reflect to software. Another is with business strategy. So even if they don't give you direct the requirement, they can show you what's the roadmap of the company. For example, if you're producing a software, to be able to know that in 5 years we're developing another model of this product, it will be very helpful for you to understand what you need to, in what way you need to modify your software.
One more question?
Yeah, I noticed that you're working on your MBA. And so that was an interesting observation in that, I appreciate the learning to speak in the language, too, is, appreciating your concerns into developing a product. But how much do you think that, a software architect really does need to understand business language? I'm sure there's more things than you put on your slide. There are 2 or 3 things that you might point us to that.
Okay, maybe in order to answer your question, I would explain why I went to MBA.
Okay, sure.
When I finished my master in computer science, I felt that in order to be a better software architect, I need to have the ability to negotiate and to leadership and to and all the soft skills, and also the ability to understand the other side, the business side, the marketing side. And I think that MBA can give you some of these abilities. I think ideally there would be a second degree in software architect which will teach you architecture methodologies and all these soft skill, business skill.
Negotiation, persuasion, cost benefit.
How to manage without authority, influence, and so on.